This is the next set of pins we're going to cover on the video. I'll have Mike tell you about each one individually, where he got them, and all the other good info on it.
All right, well, these two on the end, ooh, let's not drop it, Vivus pins, made by the, hold on a minute, I'm getting old so I can't reach stuff like I used to. Takashimiya, whatever.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Those are Japanese.
Well, yeah, but this one's made in USA.
Oh, wow.
So this is interesting. Here's the Japanese made version, which is, you know, got the red and blue, but the Japanese Bowling Congress approval permit number 20. They're made, like say, by the same company, but as you can tell, this one was made in USA, and this is permit number 61A. My guess is that this pin was made by the same outfit that made the Bullseye pin in Des Moines, Iowa, Perry Austin, because the eagles look very similar. Anyway, there's a couple other pins, that Magic Action down there, that, or whatever it's called, action pin, I'll get to. Anyway, so these are Japanese made, American made.
Where did you find those?
James Hale had this one. This one I found on Joust. So that's where I got these.
Japanese eBay?
Yes.
Basically.
All right. Now, this pen is a Catskill King, made by the Catskill Wood Industries. Catskill are mountains up in upstate New York.
What's on the back?
Red Eagle.
Okay.
Now this pen, a buddy of mine in California, the same guy that told me about these lanes at that church, had this pen, and he don't remember where he got it. But it's kind of strange because, you know, this pen's from upstate New York and somehow ended up in California. But anyway, it's just kind of a interesting label. It's permit 314.
And you do the age?
Well, being permit 314, I'm thinking it's probably 70s, something like that. But I think the Catskill Wood Products had another pen that was earlier than this one.
Did you say what year these other two first ones were? Or did we cover that?
Probably 60s, 70s.
Okay.
Late 60s, 70s, I'm
Here's
guessing.
a really neat looking pen.
So this is like the first, I think this is the first run of the M-Flight registered. It had the gold stripes and triangle outlined in red. Has a blue eagle on the back.
Oh, wow.
And then the typical base of the M-Flight registered. So yeah, this was, when I worked for International Paper, Expedex, one of the ladies that worked in the office, her name was Lynn Howerton. She went to a lot of flea markets in Chicago. And she said, well, if I see any bowling pins, I'll call you. And she called me and said, hey, I found these two bowling pins. One of them is a Score King 50. And I was like, okay. She says, the other one is an M-Flight registered. I said, well, what does the M-Flight registered look like? She goes, well, it's got gold and red stripes. And I said, oh, okay. I said, how much is it? She goes, oh, well, it's just going to be too much for you. And I said, how much? She said, 100 cents. And I was like, 100? Oh, $1. Oh, yeah, I want it. She says, do you care if my son has the Score King? He really wants the Score King. I was like, oh, you can have the Score King.
Right.
50. So that's where this came from,
For
Chicago.
$1.
For $1.
Wow. Did you actually give her $1?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
That was nice of you.
I know. Yeah. So Mendez, Canadian company. This pen is made by Vulcan. It's basically a Voltex 2 with different label. This is the same process they used for the Max pens until AMS started making them. But yeah, this is probably probably it had to be the 90s because it had the bow tie logo. So early 90s. But anyway, that's one version of Mendez pens I have. Now, these two, you got the Bullseye here and the Diamond Pyramid over here. The Bullseye was made by Atlas Products in Des Moines, Iowa. It says plastic coated, nylon reinforced. Actually, this pen is nylon coated. And if you look at it and the Pyramid, they both have very similar construction, similar stripes. This one was a test pen, the Bullseye was, and this was made in Mexico. The Diamond Pyramid and of course approved by the Mexican Bowling Federation.
There is such a thing?
I guess there was. I don't know if there is now. But anyway, the Diamond Pyramid morphed into having a different label. They're not made any longer. And right before they went out, they became the Ebonite U-Strike pins, but I don't even think they're making those anymore. But when I was talking about this pin, yeah, Des Moines, Iowa, Atlas Products, they made another version of the Bullseye that had a big red circle.
Which is the one I remember I got that was painted orange from
Jupiter or
where
Circle
the hell,
or
Circle Bowl,
Yeah.
maybe, and I sanded it down and it had the Bullseye
Right.
label on there.
right.
And
Yeah.
I think I traded it to the guy at the Bowling Hall of Fame because he didn't have one or hadn't seen one before.
Right.
It was ugly, but
Hey,
you know, I can't
whatever
remember
works.
it. It got my
So
Bruce Pluckon, right?
Bruce Pluckon, exactly.
How I remember
So-
that, I don't know.
Again, this is a Vulcan-made pin, Columbia 300, permit 342. It was obviously a pin, as in the bowling ball company. If you had a Columbia U-Dot, you had this big C on the side of it, and it has bow tie logo on the other side. And it says Columbia bowls the world over. So that came off eBay.
How old is that, do you think?
Oh, it's probably 90s, late
Okay.
90s, something like that. Another Vulcan-made pin called the Neutron. It's interesting because it doesn't have a permit number. It says ABC permit number, but no permit number. And it says coated with Sterling, control weight. It has the ABC WIBC approved. And on the back, interesting bow tie logo, but it's got all these numbers and letters, which is kind of unusual. But of course, this is the side of the pin that's never displayed, but it's kind of goofy looking.
Yeah.
This pin, again made by Vulcan, called the King Star. It was sold in Japan. This came from Claremont Pin Company.
How old do you think that is?
It's probably the 90s.
Where'd you find that one?
This one came from Claremont Pin Company. It was one of the ones he set aside for me. But it's a good chance that if Vulcan had a bunch of these made and had them left over, that they probably sold them to people. I think Jeremy Blaschko was telling me there was a guy that had pins from Vulcan and he was selling all different kinds of pins. So like if they made some Mendez pins and he had like 10 sets of them, he was selling them, but whatever. So that's kind of a mix of newer but kind of odd stuff.
Well, that's the third installment. We'll move on to the next set for the next video.